Fala, Bills Mafia, Fernandoschmude aí com mais um Leading the Charge, episódio número 48, terceira temporada. Bastante conteúdo sendo produzido aí nesses playoffs, né? E espero continuar assim. E hoje eu tenho o prazer de trazer aí o Anthony do Cover One para participar com a gente, para comentar aí do que a gente pôde ver de Bills e Dolphins ontem, né? Muita gente preocupada, né? E eu vou estar levando todas essas conversas que a gente teve no Leading the Charge de ontem, no pós-jogo, o que a gente observou. Trazer e ouvir um pouco do Anthony, que é um cara que acompanha bem de perto e entende muito aí dos X and O's do jogo aí que a gente costuma falar, né, das estratégias, estatísticas e tudo mais. Vai ser bem legal esse bate-papo, primeira meia horinha com ele, e aí depois eu traduzo um pouco, comento um pouco do que a gente conversou aqui em inglês, beleza, galera? Anthony, how you doing, my man? Thank you so much for being part of Leading the Charge today. Glad to have you.
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me. Wouldn't it be funny if I had been studying Portuguese and spoke it fluently and I understood everything you said and then I spoke it back? I was thinking that the whole time.
It would be awesome. I'm sure it's gonna happen at some time. At some time it's gonna happen.
I might do it. I might. My wife is Dominican, so she's fluent in Spanish. So I picked up and I'm good in Spanish. And I feel like, just for specifically for this, I'm gonna get in Portuguese, and you're gonna be like, Anthony, how you doing? And I'm just gonna answer you in Portuguese and go back and forth, and that'll be it.
Okay, it would be awesome. All right, but until that day doesn't arrive, let's continue in English, right? Let's talk some Bills, my man. Bills won. That's what matters at the end of the day, right? And style points doesn't matter. It wouldn't make any difference next week, right? But let me tell you, my man, Bills Mafia here in Brazil, they are worried, very, very worried because of the game of yesterday, obviously. I had a post-game show, right, Anthony? And I don't know, I'm a little bit worried, but it's not like it's real because yesterday game. I think the team has some flaws, right? And they can be exploited by good teams. But I believe, I honestly believe we have Josh Allen, we have a shot, all right? And I can't be happier, all right? I think from the beginning of the season, I thought this team could be really special, it's setting a high bar, but remember the Patriots with Brady and Moss and 18-0, and I'm not saying 18-0 season, but I thought this team with Von Miller, Micah Hyde, the way they were playing in the playoffs last year, the start of this year, the game against the Rams, I thought, look, this team can be really special because they are really good. They are playing really better than the opponents. The injuries kind of killed it, but our team, it's a good team, but it's flawed again. And I'm confident, but I think they have flaws. How do you see these build teams? How did you see in the beginning of the year? Did it change? How do you see them now? What's your expectations for these playoffs? Please share it with us, please.
In the beginning of the year, I thought I was similar to thinking what you thought. I thought this was a Super Bowl contender. I thought you could make the case that they were the best team in the NFL. I was confident in who this group was. My biggest concern with them throughout the entire offseason and to start the year was the offensive line. I'm still very concerned about that position group. I had hoped that Spencer Brown would take a step up and at least be more consistent, but we've seen him too much up and down. And when he's down, it's very bad. He's a vulnerability. And so that the offensive line has worried me, not just Spencer Brown, but the group as a whole at times has worried me. The weapons, aside from Stephon Diggs, have been inconsistent. I think part of that is with Ken Dorsey, him growing into being a play caller and first-time offensive coordinator. Josh Allen's decision-making has been a bit up and down, especially in this last game against Miami. I thought he was pushing the ball and really trying to make too much happen when he didn't need to. He could have let the game come to him and take little bits and bite-sized chunks. Defensively, I'm still high on this group. I think the loss of Von Miller is starting to show, though. Yesterday, we saw them They blitzed a lot. They used simulated pressures, creeper pressures, and all of that was because the regular front four weren't able to get consistent pressure. That is worrying me. Von was brought in to be the closer, to be the guy. We saw it in week 5 or 6 against Kansas City, like his ability to just win and impact the game when you have a great player like that. And then you lose Micah Hyde, like you said, but maybe, fingers crossed, he might be coming back. So they've lost some of the star power on defense. And then you have the offensive line still being an issue and some inconsistencies with Josh Allen. But I still think this is a championship caliber team. And to your point, like, no team is perfect. Like, every team has. Kansas City is a great team. They have issues. Cincinnati's a great team. They have issues. Philadelphia is probably the most complete team, but they still have some issues. San Francisco is a great team, but they still have some issues. There is no perfect team that is left in the playoffs right now, or even in the NFL in general. And when you have Josh Allen, I think you have a good coaching staff and you have good players. I still think it's fair to have high hopes and expectations, but yeah, I've tempered some of those as the season has gone on, just because of what we've seen due to injuries and just inconsistency in play.
Awesome. We have a big time fan of yours here. Marcel is here. Hi.
I know. I was just saying, I know Marcel.
Yeah, Marcel is awesome. Yes,
I saw the name and I was like, Marcel Rios looks familiar. That's
Marcel is in both of our words, okay, Anthony, because he can understand English, Portuguese, and Spanish. He's even better than both you and I, okay? Big time hug to Marcel. He's always here and he's talking about the film rooms and it's awesome. It's always awesome and
very cool.
It's always great to learn from you there. You and Eric do a great job there.
Oh, thank you.
And okay, let's start talking about. I want to start talking about the defense, okay? Because I feel it's the group that people tend to be more comfortable with. Okay, I think people are having more issues with Dorsey, with Josh, with the wide receivers, the running game, and they are a little bit more. I'm good with the defense. I think the defense is doing good enough and things like that. Despite I'm being the opposite, I think I'm in the minority, but I still trust more our offense than our defense. I don't know if it's still the 13 seconds. I don't know if it's the big third and long conversions that kills me every time. Okay, but I think it's still bothering me. I still can't trust this defense. I could with Von and with Micah, but right now I still can't trust them. How did you feel about the defense yesterday? What do you think they did well? What do you think really is missing? I particularly thought when we rushed the 4 guys and we showed, okay, we're gonna rush the defensive line, the 4 guys from the defensive line. We hardly ever got any success, especially against some backups that you expected. Peneza, Boogie, Shaq, Rousseau was invisible, maybe taking more double teams now without Vaughn and having such a good season. But I think we didn't win enough. We didn't pressure the rookie enough when we rushed 4. And when we sent the simulated pressures, when we blitzed or sent 4, but sending Taron or Wallen or Milan or Edmonds, we got home, and maybe we stopped doing that sometimes. I don't know. But I felt negatively about this. And I felt positively in watching our defensive backs making some plays on the ball, because it looked like every time the ball was threw up in other games, the receivers were waiting down with it. Like, oh my goodness, Dane is always there, but he never makes a play. Or Kair, the same thing. Even Trent, right? But yesterday we saw great plays on the ball. What did you think? What do you think? How do you see your defense going forward? Do you trust them to stop Mahomes, Burrow, to keep them under 20 points, for example, if you need it?
Oh boy, that's such a tough question to answer. It's, I started in this year confident in this group. My biggest thing, and I'll start with your first point, I am concerned about the front 4. And when you lose a player like Von Miller, everything changes. That was the one guy you could rely on. You knew he could win one-on-one at any time, or they had to double team him so someone else could win one-on-ones. And we saw so much success from the Bills front four when Von was playing. I thought they were good against the run yesterday. Rousseau and that entire group up front, they were very good against the run as a front four group. But yeah, to your point, when it came to the pass rush, the pressure was just not consistently there, which is worrisome on its own. But then added in with, you had second stringers and backups, you had a practice squad guy on the line. You would think that they would be able to take advantage of that matchup advantage, and they weren't. And I put the positive spin on it with, I like what Leslie Frazier did to, correct for that. So simulated pressures and the blitzes and the creeper pressures and really manufacturing ways to get to Skylar Thompson because the front four couldn't do it. That was very positive. I love that adjustment. I love that game plan. But that's risky, right? Like, you want Tremaine Edmonds in coverage because he's good in coverage. You don't want it to have to blitz him all the time. You don't want to have to blitz Matt Milano. You don't want to have to blitz Taron Johnson. And even with these looks, like some of the ones like you mentioned, you take Rousseau or Epinesa and you drop them into coverage and you blitz Taron Johnson, that's still risky because now you have a defensive lineman in coverage who doesn't really live in that spot. So the sustainability of it going forward, that gives me cause for concern, especially when you're going to play the Cincinnati Bengals this week. Most likely you're going to play the Kansas City Chiefs if you get past the Bengals, and they have the quarterback and the coaching staff and the personnel to take advantage of the vulnerabilities you have. And if the Bills can't consistently get pressure with just the front four, it limits the coverages you can play on the back end, and it forces you to have to commit more numbers going forward, which is that risk-reward nature. And that makes me nervous a little bit. So that was my biggest cause for concern, that defensive line. And it does concern me for the entire road going forward, which makes me think, to your point, like, you have to rely on Josh Allen putting up like 30, 35 points, because when the defense is playing better teams, they're probably going to give up 20 to 30 points against the better teams. And you hope they can limit that or mitigate it. But it does concern me for sure. And then your last point, the defensive backs, great game, 7 pass breakups for this group. And like you said, we haven't seen like the last 5, 6, 7 games, Dane Jackson, Taron Johnson, Kyer Elam, even Trey White, like, they'd be right there, but they wouldn't be able to break the pass up, and receivers were bringing it down. Yesterday, we didn't see that. We saw, Edmonds breaking up passes, Taron Johnson, Elam, Trey, like, fantastic plays on the ball, and they were hugely important. So I'm starting to feel more confident in the secondary. I also think if Micah Hyde comes back, I think the secondary, plus with how Milano and Edmonds are playing, is good enough to make up for the front four not getting there all the time. Maybe you get better coverage and the quarterback has to hold the ball longer, and then the front four can get there. But that is a big cause for concern with me, especially when you play Patrick Mahomes and Joe Burrow. Like, you want to be able to have numbers and coverage, and if you can't, it gets scary.
That's true, man. And now facing the Bengals, and they are also missing a lot of people in their offensive line. They just lost their left tackle now, right?
Yep, and he dislocated his kneecap.
Yeah, it was ugly. And they played 3 backups yesterday for the majority of the game against the Ravens. So ideally, you think, okay, that's a matchup that Epinesa, Shaq, Boogie, Rousseau, they can take advantage and win to these matchups, right? And it's going to be so important against a great group of skill position players, and Burrow distributing the ball so well. So I think it's going to be huge, the importance of winning these matchups on the trenches, right?
Yeah, especially against like Joe Burrow is such a good quarterback, and then Jamar Chase and T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd, like, you need the front four to win, so you can drop 7 into coverage, because it's hard to cover those guys, and Joe Burrow's really good. This isn't Skylar Thompson, which, no disrespect to Skylar, but he's not the level of Joe Burrow. And then because he's not at that level, he limits what Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle can do. That doesn't happen this week. Like, you're playing against a really good quarterback with a great group of wide receivers. Yeah, you need that front four to take advantage of, the 3 backups that are going to be playing for the Cincinnati offensive line.
And ideally, you tackle better. My goodness, don't miss the tackles on 3rd and long. I think it's been killing us, right? There was one play, a fourth and long, I think it was.
Yeah, 4th and 8 when Milano.
Yes. And I was like, no, you can't miss those.
He came forward so fast, like a heat-seeking missile, and it was like,
Yeah,
no, you don't need to do that. Just
yeah,
break down and just wait. It's 4th and 8. Not to mention, that pass was to Jeff Wilson, the Miami running back. He caught it like 2 or 3 yards behind the line of scrimmage. So he had to go. It
yes.
was 4th and 8, but he had to go like 10 or 11 yards to get the first down. And Milano just whiffs, and then Tyreek Hill blocks Edmonds. And I literally just put my hands in my. I was just like, oh.
Yes, I couldn't believe it. And it's been a trend, I think, all season long. I remember the Jefferson catch and other plays that we see those. Yesterday in our post game here, there were fans saying, please allow 4th and 1 plays, but not 4th and 18, 4th and 19, because 4th and 1, our defense is doing better. I have more confidence on our defense on 4th and 1 than 4th and 18. Like,
which is ridiculous. Like, it shouldn't be.
Makes no sense. You work so hard to get them in a bad position, right, in early downs, and then you allow big third down for the conversions. It's really concerning, but hopefully, I think it's a big part of McDermott and Fraser defense tackling well. I think when people talk about Dane or talk about Bainford, and I think their tackling ability is a big part of why they are chosen sometimes over Kair or over other options, even in free agency during the offseason, etc. So we'd expect or defense to tackle well and avoid this kind of big gains after the catch, right?
Yeah, you would. For a defensive coach like Sean McDermott, who's all about technique and structure and organization, you would expect that tackling piece to be there, and it hasn't been this year. They've been one of the poor tackling teams in the entire league, really, since they started out so strong, especially in that Kansas City game. And that was a representative of what they had been all year, tackling really well. But it seems like once they came out of the bye week, that game against Green Bay and then the Jets game and going down the road, tackling has just been a consistent issue. We saw it with DeMar Hamlin, Jordan Poyer, Dane Jackson, Matt Milano, Trey White has missed tackles. The defensive line will miss tackles. That's what's concerning as well. Like, it was similar to, not making plays at the catch point for the defensive backs. It wasn't just one player, it was everyone. And it's like, what is going on? Like, why? Like, what's in the water? Or like, what's happening at practice? Like, why is this happening to everyone? Like, it's like one of those things when like, compare it to soccer. Like, it's not just like, oh, your striker's missing like wide open shots. It's like everyone. And you're like, this doesn't make sense. Why is everyone missing goal? Like, what's happening? And it's gotten better. I thought their tackling was better yesterday. I still do think it's a concern. And again, if you're not getting pressure with your front four and the quarterback, it just has time and he's able to, and even if you're playing coverage and he's dumping it down short, you have to come up and make those tackles. That's what the Bills defense is designed to do. Keep everything in front of them, come up and make the tackle. So if you can't make the tackle, that's important in any defense in football, but especially the Bills defense. You have to be able to tackle consistently. And they missed a couple yesterday again, but I thought it was better compared to what they've been, but it's still something that in the back of my mind, I'm worried about, because statistically on the year, they've been one of the, actually, I think they are either set first or second when it comes to the most missed or broken tackles for a defense at like roughly 16 or 17%, which is really high and really bad. Like, that's worse than like the Chicago Bears, the Houston Texans, the Atlanta Falcons, like, and you don't expect that from a defense that's one of the best in the league statistically and on tape. I also think some of it goes to how they play. Like, they are fast and aggressive and they try to make explosive plays. So sometimes
going for the ball, sometimes more often, right? Trying to punch it out and things like that. Marcel even says here, they don't have time to practice.
That's a good example too. With everything with Hamlin and with the weather scenario. Yep, that's fair too.
Focusing on recovering people instead of focusing or taking more reps at practice, and it absolutely can make a difference for sure.
Good point.
And okay, let's flip the side of the ball then, Anthony, and talk offense. Here is the main concern, I think, for most of the Bills Mafia. A lot of people are mad at Dorsey, and I've been on Dorsey's corner all season long. I love the choice in the beginning. I love the guy. I love the I love his relationship with Josh since the quarterback room. The fact that he was a quarterback, a successful one, and a smart guy. I always love the choice, and I love his job. I think his job is really good. Obviously, he's not perfect. He's a rookie offensive coordinator, and he's also an explosive guy, a guy who wants perfection and maybe too similar to Josh, maybe, right?
Yes.
So uh, people want, like, okay, we know Josh is gonna try the big play. The offensive coordinator should control him and maybe call a play that doesn't have so many options down the field and things like that. And I think it's not gonna happen because Dorsey's like, look, and I kind of agree. To be fair, talking about this punctually about that drive where we had two deep shots and the sack and a 3 and out. All right, where Josh underthrew Gabe and tried again, and then the sack, and then the 3 and out. And if I'm Dorsey there, thinking like them and like Josh too, I think they simply think, look, make the damn throw, because it was there. Gabe had a step, throw it correctly, put it on money, and we have a big play, a touchdown, and nobody's talking about anything. So it's not like it was a bad choice by Josh or a bad call because it worked. It was bad execution. So how do you see Dorsey, this offense, Josh decision making? Because I get that we expect Josh to make perfect decisions, to know when to go deep, when to take the check down. But I think it takes time. Maybe he can get there when he's more experienced and start to lose a step running the ball or buying time, etc. But right now, he's still developing, he's still young, and he's still aggressive. And I can live with that because I think more times than not, we have big plays instead of interceptions, or we are more successful than not. How do you see all this situation? How do you see Dorsey's season, and how they should adjust going forward or not? How do you see all this situation?
It's such a big question, and there's so many parts, and it's one that makes me really frustrated. So I agree early on in the year, especially in the midpoint. I think Dorsey was trying to find his footing. There were some issues I had with the red zone offense, the design, the concepts, the play calling, who was running routes in what situations. But as the year has gone on, I think he's gotten better. And I think we're at the point now for Bills fans where, and this isn't just unique to Dorsey, fans always need somebody or something to focus all their anger and frustration into. You need that one vessel to be like, well, we lost because of so-and-so. And on the offensive side of the ball recently, it's been Ken Dorsey. Anytime something goes wrong, fans are like, well, it's because of Dorsey. It's because of Dorsey. It's Dorsey's fault. And I don't think that's true. I think that's lazy, like to just blame, especially in a game where you have 11 versus 11. You have 22 players and all these coaches and all these different aspects, and you want to blame one person. It's usually never that. Player, coach, any piece like that. In regards to yesterday, there were times when Josh was taking those deep shots and he had other players open underneath. And I saw a lot of criticism from people saying, oh, Dorsey keeps calling deep shots and calling deep shots. But there were other routes in the play that were open. Josh is choosing to take those deep shots. He wants to maximize, and I say he, I mean Josh Allen. He wants to make everything out of every play. He wants to maximize everything. It's the same thing that drives him when he runs the ball. And instead of sliding, he puts his shoulder down to try and run through a linebacker. He wants every yard, every ounce of anything on every single play. And sometimes it leads him to be too aggressive. He takes the deep shot. The first interception, when it was 17-3, and he throws it deep to John Brown and Xavier Howard picks it off. It's 17-3. You're at the your own 47-yard line. It's first down. Devin Singletary is wide open underneath. Just dump it down. Take 4, 5, 6 yards and keep working it. But no, He thinks, you know what, I can get a touchdown. I want a 53-yard touchdown, and he launches it. And even with that, if he throws it to the other shoulder, to John Brown's outside shoulder, to the sideline, it might be a completion and it might work out. But either way, that's on Josh. That's a poor decision you don't need to make in that moment. But again, it's the same thing in him that when he's running to the sideline against the Patriots and he throws all the way back across his body and makes a completion in the end zone and does the same thing against Miami in week 15. Like, he's chaotic, and this is who you have to live with Josh as a quarterback. And I also love the other point you made, he's taking these deep shots. Granted, there were players open underneath that he could have gone to, but also the deep shots are open. Yeah. You just need to make a better throw, or Gabe Davis needs to make the catch, or we might not be talking about any of this if Khalil Shakir makes that catch at the end of the second quarter on the 54-yard pass. Like, there's so many pieces. Then you add in the offensive line is leaky and doesn't pass protect great at all times. There's all these moving parts. And even with that, this offense this year, they're second in DVOA, which is tremendous. They were only behind the Kansas City Chiefs. Last year, they were 10th with Brian Dable. So if anything, they improved in efficiency with advanced metrics. And even yesterday, the 3 turnovers, the 3 and out, the poor decision-making, all of these things, they scored 34 points. Like, all of that went against them, and they still had a good performance. I do think there are concerns. I do think, you said it beautifully, Ken Dorsey is similar with Josh. Like, Ken Dorsey wants to attack. Like, he wants to maximize every single play. So maybe you need to call more plays where there is no deep option, because you need to force Josh to go underneath because he's so attack minded. So maybe Dorsey could do that. But if we're criticizing the performance from yesterday, I do think Dorsey played a role, but I think the majority of it, the key word you used that I agree with, is on the execution. Josh Allen, the receivers, the offensive linemen. I don't think the play calling and concepts and design was the bigger problem. I think it was the execution that happened on the field. And again, even within that, they put up 34 points. Like, that's still a good performance. You just have to make some little improvements here or there. But I don't blame Ken Dorsey for it. Again, I don't even blame Josh Allen too much. Like, even some of the decisions that it's like, you could have taken the safer throw. The aggressive throw was still there. You just need to make a better throw, or somebody needs to make the catch for you. So there's a lot of variables for me to just blame one person or one coach in that aspect. But it's picking up steam, man. Every time the Bills don't score, it feels like everybody's like, oh, Ken Dorsey.
Yeah, exactly. Like, yesterday I told people, like, they are acting like Ken Dorsey's out there playing Madden, and he's pressing the buttons where Josh is going to throw the ball. Okay, I'm going deep, go X receiver now, go route. No, it's Josh's decision. And even there, look, just like you said, it's not like just Gabe Davis had a step and a good throw puts him maybe in a big play, in a touchdown or a big gain, etc. But even a bad throw, it's one-on-one. Gabe Davis against a rookie undrafted quarterback. And Josh looks and knows, you know what? Even if it's not a great throw, I trust my guy to make this play.
Make a play.
And I'm going to give him a chance, right? And it's not a bad decision. Like, it's one-on-one. And we don't see a lot of defense giving it to you like Miami did. So Miami is very aggressive, in my opinion, to give you this kind of play, because
that's a huge piece. Miami blitzed 52.8% of the time. That's the look they were giving you. So you have to take it sometimes. And it's a risk reward. Like, if you're going to be that aggressive, you have to be aggressive in return. And sometimes you get a completion, like the big one to Stephon Diggs. Sometimes it's incomplete, or sometimes you get sacked. It's give and take.
Absolutely. And at the end of the day, even if they had success in one drive, in a couple of passes, we had success in other ones, and we put more than 30 points on the board. So sometimes people see 1-2 interceptions, and they're like, oh my God, Josh needs to take care of the ball because Josh sucks, he's turning it over. But I used another comparison to Justin Herbert, because Justin Herbert ended the game against the Jacks without an interception, all right? But his offense didn't score a point in the second half, or scored 3 points in the second half and allowed a big-time comeback. I'd rather get the guy who forces things or who tries to win the game, because Josh is paid to win games for us. He's not paid to manage games and put the games on the defense or put the games on his running backs. No, he's the guy to win the games for us, and he's aware of that. And he plays like that. So
yes,
I'd rather have the guy who takes the shots, who tries the plays, and more often than not gets these plays done, made for us, than having a guy who Kirk Cousins throw to running back and lose the game. You know.
Yeah,
so it's not gonna be 100% all the time. He's gonna get the good results, but I can live with the bad results if he's still giving us a lot of points and a lot of good results in other plays.
Yes, the good outweighs the bad, and people seem to, and I get it. Like, fans are emotional, and you're into the game, and you're frustrated. But again, I don't think people see the throws that he makes that make you go, oh, why would you throw that? That was a stupid throw. The thing in his brain that made him throw that is the same thing in his brain that made him run to the sideline against Miami at the end of the second quarter in week 15 and run out the whole clock and make a throw across his body to James Cook for a touchdown. And everybody's like, oh my God, that was an amazing play. No, it was a stupid play.
Yeah, exactly.
That was a low percentage probability of success. You wasted the whole clock. You took away the chance of even getting a field goal. That wasn't a smart play, but it led to a touchdown. But nobody's sitting there criticizing him for that because it led to a touchdown. People get so focused on the result and they lose sight of the process that led to that result. But it's the same process every time. It's similar to, I don't like comparing players, but it's like Brett Favre. In the 90s, Brett Favre would make throws that were amazing. You'd be like, oh my God, he's amazing. And then he'd make a decision on the next drive and you'd be like, oh my God, is this guy stupid? Like, why would he throw that? That's what you have. But again, if it leads more, as long as it continues to be more positive than negative, it's a good thing. If we get to a point where it's like all of these decisions are leading to turnovers, then it's a problem. But more often than not, knock on wood, he succeeds and he makes a good play. And that's the nature of who he is.
Absolutely. And if we think that the only guy who consistently have earned his trust is Diggs to make the plays more often than not. The other guys, all of them have let him down sometimes here and there. Gabe, Mackenzie, Bees, everybody has let him down sometimes here and there. So if we think we can give him more guys he can trust going forward, next draft, next offseason, and put more talent around him, or maybe even Gabe Davis can come back to his playoff level from last year, etc.
Yeah.
He will make even more plays, right? Because one of these plays, guys who are gonna make plays for him. So I really can't be over critical on Josh with this situation, but I want to share one with you because this one is good. Marcel is saying here about Dable. Look at what Dable did with Josh and have been doing with Jones. Avoid turnovers. But I mean, just like you said, first interception, Josh throws to Singletary, and there is no interception there. The second interception, a little bit unlucky. I think the defensive back was a little bit grabby on Cole on that play. And I think the ball maybe arrived just a little bit late, and it's the timing between quarterback wide receiver.
He also had another open player in the middle of the field again, where he didn't even need to make that throw.
Yeah, so it's not like they are turning the ball over on dumb plays all the time. And Dable yesterday, it wasn't even him running Jones, but Jones run a lot. And when Josh used it to run that way, people were crazy at Dable, like, Josh is running too much. He's getting hit. He's not gonna last all season. And now yesterday we needed Josh running because our running game was having problems, and they didn't run Josh until that third down. And so it's difficult every time. It's never good enough. It seems.
No,
it's
never.
Tough.
I think to Marcel's point with that, what I do think Dable I think was better at kind of like reining Josh back in. Whereas I think like if Josh makes the too aggressive play, I think Dorsey is still like, well, okay, you know what? That's fine. We're going to keep being aggressive. And again, it's hard to argue with that because the Bills statistically, from an efficiency standpoint, have been a better offense this year than they were last year. But I think with Marcel, like when he says, like, look at what Dable did with Josh Allen, the first thing that clicks in my brain is Dable had whether it was with his play calls or maybe he's saying something to Josh directly, I think he was able to settle Josh down and kind of rein him back in, whether, verbally or with the play calling, to get him to settle down. Instead of being like, I got to make a play, he'd get him to come down a couple levels. And I think Dorsey, like with what you said, Dorsey is more similar to Josh, where Josh is like, I got to make a play. And then Dorsey's like, attack. Dable was a little more of that calming presence, which again, you'd expect. Like Brian Dable has been a coordinator for a very long time with multiple, his success at Alabama, his multiple years with the Bills, his time in New England, like he's been around the block a lot. So I would expect him to have a bit more of that game management piece. And I think that's where Dorsey could start to improve in terms of kind of settling Josh down and reining him back in. And one more point from Marcel that I really liked. Marcel was talking about the offensive line in there, saying that Josh doesn't trust the offensive line. Yep, 13 hits and 7 sacks. Our O-line must improve. I like what you said. I do think there needs to be, I think you could see some more weapons added for Josh, another wide receiver in free agency or the draft. But for me, I think it starts with the offensive line. Yeah, I agree with Marcel here. Like, I think Josh is uncomfortable in the pocket, and not skittish in a bad way, but skittish to the point where if he sees pressure, he's like, okay, it's fine. I'll go make a play. Like the best pass protection for the Bills is Josh Allen being athletic and strong. Like think of all the passes. You don't really see Josh drop back and just, let me see. Like he's always moving.
On tripping rushes and just hairly, right?
Yep. When you see regular 4-man rushes or blitzes, he's always got to like dance and move and do something. There's so much that's on him. I think with what the Bills have done with the defensive line the past couple of years in the draft and in free agency, they need that this year for the offensive line. You need a revamping. And I think the weapons have been talked about by so many people, like, Gabe Davis and Isaiah McKenzie and Dawson Knox, and they're not, reliable. And I do agree with that to a degree. But for me, it starts with the offensive line, because if you get a better offensive line and protect Josh Allen, that also helps the run game, and you try to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. For me, it starts with the O-line, but I do think they could add some pieces for the receiving group in order to help Josh.
Completely agree. And when we were talking, I was just thinking on it for the first time when we talked about Dable maybe settling Josh down a little bit and look, easy, don't go deep. Maybe even the designed run sometimes was a way to fool Josh. Yeah. Like, you know what? I'm going to call a designed run. Here, Josh is going to go sugar high Josh.
He thinks it's aggressive.
But it's not that aggressive. He's running the ball, and it's all good. I think.
Yeah, he's like tricking him a little bit, like, you want to be aggressive? Here, let's run it with you. And then in the back of his mind, he's like, no, I'm just settling you down. It's okay.
A 3-5 yard gain is better than a deep shot.
Just kind of settle it. I think I like that a lot, because it puts the ball in his hand. It makes him think like, I'm gonna run the ball, and it's just like, no, we're just settling you down.
Awesome. Okay. Guilherme. Okay. Guilherme is always here. Big time spectator from the show here. Let me put here. He said here, I don't really need to translate it for you, but I'm going to do, because there are other American people watching. All right. I know you can read in Portuguese perfectly, understand.
Oh yeah, of course.
But he said Josh needs to take more what the defenses give him, and this way we're gonna get more first downs and stay on the field, things like that. And I think you and me, we're gonna agree with it. But in this game in specific yesterday, I felt like the defense was giving you the big play. Look, go, throw deep. We have no help. We have 1-on-1. All right, your receiver is one step forward. And even if they drill hooks routes or curl routes there, I felt like maybe the quarterbacks were ready to jump on those routes and make plays and try interceptions. And that's why we could get on step and have the chances of the big shots. So despite what Guilherme said here, making sense to shorter plays, check downs, things like that, I felt yesterday like they were taking what the defense was giving to them, but it was the big play, and it's so unusual. We're not used to it. It was a bold strategy and kind of worked sometimes, but at the end of the day, we scored a lot, right? I don't know if you agree.
Yeah.
What do you think?
No, I agree. I think to Guillermo's point, like on the season as a whole, I completely agree. I think he, especially when facing zone coverage, there was times where he was forcing it downfield, and it's like, no, just take what the defense gives you. Dump it down for 4 yards and let your running back or tight end run for another 2 or 3, maybe breaks a tackle and you get even more. Take what the defense is giving you even more. I think yesterday, I do think there were, like we talked about, there were instances on some of the deep shots where he did have players open underneath and he could have checked it down. But to your point, with what Miami was doing, Miami was showing those cover 0 blitzes. So they're bringing like 7 guys and they only have 4 back. What the defense is giving you is the deep shot. Like that's where the space is. And especially on some of them, it's like it's 3rd and 7. The defensive backs are all sitting at 7 yards. They want you to snap it and throw it quick so they can come up and make the tackle. Where the space is behind them. So Josh is attacking the space. But what Miami is doing, that's the risk reward of it. Like they're forcing you to make low percentage throws deep down the field. But if you make them, it's going to gash them. And all of a sudden, it's a low percentage play, but you just gained 50 yards. And now you're set up in better position. It's the risk reward of how Miami works. Like that's why Miami's defense can be lights out on one drive. And then the next drive, they give up a touchdown in like 3 plays. And you're like, oh, what the hell? That's just how they are. And they force you to live in that world. So while I do agree, I think Guillermo is completely right for the entire year. He could have taken the check down more. And yesterday there were several instances where he could have taken what the defense was giving him. But yeah, I do think a lot of those incompletions where it's like, oh, I can't believe he threw it deep. No, that was the read. Like his man was open. You just got to make a better throw or your receiver has to make a play. That's what the defense is giving you. You have to make them pay for it.
Awesome. 2 more, okay? I don't want to take too much of your time, but I already
whatever.
minutes.
This happened the last time I was on the show. It was going to be like 30, and I was on for like an hour. I enjoy talking with you and hanging out with you and being on in Brazil and for all the Portuguese people. So however long you want me, you got me. I'm off today. Awesome. I do not care.
Thank you so much. And look, Kogoi has a kind of a simple question, okay? Forget now the X and O's. Forget now the analytics, forget now all you know about football, and let's think about simple fans watching the game, okay? A simple fan watching the game, okay? And his question is simple. He says, ask him if they, in general, I think Bills Mafia in general, all right, are afraid of Josh when he plays, when he drops back to pass, when he plays. Do you feel fear of mistakes? Like, oh, he's gonna make a mistake, he's gonna fumble, he's gonna throw an interception. Do you feel afraid of Josh when he plays, or do you feel confident?
Ooh, that's a really good question. I'll be honest with you. For me, it's 50-50. Every time he drops back, because I know how he plays. Like he's so aggressive. He could do something where I'm like, oh my God, that's an amazing play, or it could be terrible. Again, like we said earlier, like majority of the time it works out, but every time he drops back, I do get like a little flutter in my heart. Like I get a little nervous because he's unpredictable in a good way, but he's unpredictable. He's, stiff arming defensive linemen and running through linebackers and getting hit, but still throwing it and throwing it back across his body. Like he violates so many rules that like are established for quarterbacks. Like if you were playing quarterback or you had a son and you were teaching him how to play quarterback, you would not show him videotape of Josh Allen because that's not how you should play quarterback. Like they say it on the broadcast, like he's an alien or he's a unicorn. Like the way he plays football, people don't play like that. Like he has good mechanics now and better fundamentals than he's given credit for, but he makes plays that you shouldn't even be trying. So yeah, I do have a little fear, and I think that exists for some people, like in talking with family and friends or just your average day, like or average everyday Bills fans. That fear does exist. Like my wife says it. We'll be watching and he'll drop the pass, he'll throw it. And she'll be like, "Oh no, Josh!" And then it's a completion. She's like, "Oh, okay." Like I think that's how it is. Like there is that fear. That's a very good question. I like that.
Yeah, man. I remember yesterday the Knox TD when he ran to the sideline and Knox was running like the flat to the flat, and I was like, "No, he's covered. Throw it away.
Exactly.
Throw it away." And then he did the wheel route, and I was like, "Oh, no, he's open." And
that's
touchdown.
It.
Awesome, right?
That's it.
And again in the interception to John Brown. Because in the TV camera, like you're not seeing John Brown running the route. And you see Josh, it wasn't a pump fake. He kind of hesitated, right? So he hesitated, and I was, "No, don't do it anymore. Throw it away." And then he did. And then intercepted. Oh my God, Darren, don't do that. But more times than not, we say no, yes. So it's
exactly.
Right.
But you still have, so more often than not, it's no, yes. But you still have the no. Yeah. And that's the fear. That's the fear. So it's very real. Like, that's a good question.
Awesome. Okay. Hujeri, he's another guy who's always here. Big hug to Hujeri. And unfortunately, he roots for Flamengo, okay? And Flamengo is like the Patriots. Flamengo is
I know.
the evil empire in soccer in Brazil, you know? But he's asking any news about Elon getting injured in the last throw of the game. He played a great game, and I was really happy to see Kyrie playing so well, man. We need him playing this way. And he also said about Gabe Davis finding his game again in the playoffs. Can you talk a little bit about these two guys, Kyrie and Gabe, the expectations early, how they played the season, what to expect now in the playoffs? I think they started really great.
Yeah.
And I think we need both of them, right?
I agree. His first piece about Kyrie getting injured at the end of the game, that was just a cramp. He walked off the field and he was fine. So he'll, knock on wood, he should be completely fine. I wouldn't think that that's going to be anything that hurts him going forward. He did have a great game. You know, even Dane Jackson was in before him. Then Dane Jackson got hurt. They brought in Kyrie. Dane Jackson was having a good game as well. But then Kyrie comes in. He has that interception on a really smart play. They were in cover 2. So Kyrie is supposed to be that cloud corner covering the flat. But there was no receiver there, so he just kept dropping underneath and made the interception. It was really smart. Then he has the good recovery speed on basically the last play of the game for Miami's offense, where he knocks the ball away from Gesicki and effectively ends the game. I think you saw the benefits of his size, his strength, his athleticism, his ability to play man coverage. Like, you saw that. I do think he's still learning as a zone corner in terms of how to leverage space. So I don't know how much we see him against Cincinnati, because I think the key to playing Cincinnati is playing more cover 2 and more 2 high coverages, which may favor Dane Jackson or maybe even Christian Benford, who's a very good zone corner. But I think Elam's play yesterday and throughout the year has been encouraging. And I think his future and the potential there for what he can be, I think, is very bright and exciting. And yeah, excellent point on Gabe Davis. As soon as, I think it was the first quarter when Josh scrambled, he moved up in the pocket and he threw it to Gabe, and Gabe caught it like sliding on the ground, but he did it with his hands like this, like he always does. That weird, I hate it, but that's what he's done. He did that back in college. He never does this. He catches like this. I don't know why. I hate it, but he did it like he slid down on the ground and caught it. When that happened,
saved the ball to touch the ground on that play, right?
But it stuck to his hand and they ruled it a catch. I was like, okay. When that happened, I was like, it's going to be a good Gabe Davis day. And then he has that touchdown catch later on a great throw from Allen, but he catches it again like this, and he taps both his feet. He had a good game yesterday. I also think some of the noise about him having a bad year, I think, has been a bit overblown. I know he's had some drops, and I know he didn't have the year that people expected him to have, myself included. I had hoped that he was going to have a more efficient or consistent year. But some of the stats we see get thrown around for him, it'll be like, oh, he's only caught 50% of the targets thrown his way. That doesn't take into account, like, if Josh throws him a ball but throws it 50 yards over his head, that still counts as a target. Even though Gabe had no chance to catch that ball, it counts as a target, and it's a 0% reception rate. So some of those numbers, especially because he's such a deep threat, his role has a low percentage of success. He's getting the ball thrown 20, 30 yards downfield. And like we saw yesterday, those are risk reward, low percentage opportunities. So I think his year has been better than people potentially thought. But regardless, he had a good game yesterday, and they needed him to. Like, and you're going to need him more going forward, because Cincinnati, Kansas City especially, if they get to the Super Bowl and they play San Francisco or Philadelphia, those are my two favorites to come out of the NFC. They are going to take Stephon Diggs away. They're going to make you go to someone else. And so Gabe Davis is going to need to step up. Somebody, nice. Gabe Davis and Goku doing the Kamehameha, man. I love that. That's actually, what's funny from that? I love Dragon Ball. I love Dragon Ball Z, all of it.
Okay.
I can't stand Goku. I hate him because I'll tell you what. I'll tell you how. Because my favorite is Vegeta. And Vegeta never gets to be the hero. It's always Goku. My favorite, I mean, I respect him and I like him, but that's why my favorite, the Cell saga, where Gohan is the one who beats Cell, is my favorite. But even then, it's like Goku's got to give him a speech to encourage him, and this and that. It's all like he always wins. It's like Goku, Superman. If you watch wrestling, John Cena, they always win, and it's always them. And I'm like, no, I just want someone else. But that, I can't believe I never thought of it. That's an awesome thing. That's literally what Gabe Davis is doing. He's doing the Kamehameha on every single catch. And that's not how you should be catching.
I'm not a Lord of the Rings guy, but I know the story and watched one of the movies. And Frodo is like, he's always messing up. And that other boy, Sam, I think it is. I don't know.
Sam.
Sam is saving the day all the time, like talking to Frodo and convincing him.
But they give Frodo the credit.
Yeah. Come on. I feel you. And I feel that as a Vegeta guy, like, I'm just like, one time, I just want Vegeta to be the one who beats the guy. Like, I want him to be, and it's never Vegeta. And they always make us think it's Vegeta. Like, Vegeta reaches some level and it's like, oh man, Vegeta's going to do it. And then he gets killed, and then Goku finds a way to reach some new power height, and he saves the day. And I'm like, okay, here we go. Okay. Awesome. Okay. Just getting back to Gabe.
Yeah, we got off track.
Yeah, but it's awesome. I love it.
Me too.
And my problem with Gabe this year has been something that I haven't seen people talking a lot about it. And I really want to know your opinion about it. I just felt Gabe sometimes, and I can be wrong about that, because body language can really fool people, right? For example, I think Cutler, for example, people were always down on Cutler because his body language, and he was a great quarterback for a long time. Especially with the Broncos and early with the Bears. Yeah. So, but people were like, "Oh, his body language, he doesn't care." And
he once played with broken ribs, and I remember people were like, "Oh, he doesn't care. Look at his body language." Like, he just went back out there with broken ribs, like he cares.
Absolutely, all right. And body language can fool people, but I felt like on some plays, and even on some Josh interceptions, he didn't put the effort to avoid it, or he could have done better, For example, I remember the one of the Jair Alexander's interceptions against the Packers, and Jair dove right at the feet of Gabe and made the interception, and I was like, okay, Josh scrambled, he saw Gabe and I'm gonna give him a shot and threw it low, okay, right at his feet. If Jair could dive there and make the play, Gabe could have done it too. Come on, it was true to him, But he was out there like trotting and this is a bad pass. I'm not gonna die for it. And I remember on another game, like I don't know if it was against the Bears, but again, scramble drill and Josh was scrambling to the left and he threw on the in the end zone, and the defensive back was turned. He wasn't watching Josh. He was with his back turned to Josh and covering Gabe. And Gabe could maybe try to sell some like a soccer player, run, hit him and fall and do something to show, look, he didn't let me come to the ball and a flag could have been thrown that, but he simply that's a bad throw. It's I can get there and that's it. So I felt a little bit like this on some plays, like Gabe didn't try hard as he could to make some plays from Josh when Josh was trusting him, giving him a chance, right? That was my problem with him. But other than that, I think we had a high expectation because of the playoffs, all the touchdowns against the Chiefs, and it's not always like this. And the way he's being used, like you said, deep threat, low percentage throws. But about the fourth, what do you think? Maybe I'm being too hard on him, but did you feel something like this, or do you think it was normal, or more times really try harder? Or
the one that you just mentioned it, the one that really put it on my radar was that one you just talked about, where it's in the end zone, the defender's back is turned, and he could have, because the defender's back is turned and he's looking at Gabe. If Gabe just tries to go and make a play, the defender runs into him and it's a flag because you weren't looking at the ball. You got in the receiver's way. It's pass interference, first down at the 1 yard line, easy. I felt like, you could have done more to really draw the flag, like really emphasize that. And you wouldn't even have to, you're not even diving or elaborating. Just try and make a play and it's going to be interference. I even thought that a little yesterday on the one deep shot where he tried to moss the defender. I felt like if he tried to play through him, he could have potentially drawn a flag, although that wasn't necessarily effort based. So I have thought of it from time to time. I think a lot of it is tied to just the way he moves and his body language. Like his natural movements look very, and I don't mean this how I'm going to say it, and I don't mean it negatively. His body movements just look lazy. Like he just looks very, even when he's making a catch, it's like he's just like, well, I shouldn't even do this because that's not how he does it. It's just very like, I just put my hands out. Like everything he does is very almost like nonchalant and very calm and relaxed and just versus guys like Stephon Diggs, who were like, you can see the exertion and the effort on every single play. So I do think from time to time there has been some issues with his effort. I don't think he's a poor effort kind of guy, but I think, to your point, I think that has been a real moment in several aspects this year where you could question it and be like, dude, like you got to try a little harder on that to do something. So I do think there is some merit to that theory and to that notification.
Yes, never really seen anything like this on other years, but this year I felt like this, and it's not all the time, but on some plays, like I mentioned to you.
It's random. Like you're not thinking of it for a whole game, but it'll happen once, and you're like, there it is.
Yes, and I'm like, come on, Josh is out there like stiff arming people and scrambling and my goodness, falling off, and you can do a little bit to help him.
Yeah,
come on,
just a little bit.
And that's a little bit frustrating sometimes. But like you said, sometimes it's just body language. People are like this, and we tend to judge wrongly. So Gustavo, he's saying part of Brazilian fans, including myself, this part believe that McDermott and Bean rebuilt the team, but that they may have reached the ceiling of their abilities. What do you think?
Ooh. So meaning like the players have reached the ceiling of their abilities?
No.
Bean and McDermott
and Bean. Let me put some context. I think yesterday, McDermott timeouts and some of these decisions let people, myself included, I was like, I didn't remember how nervous McDermott starts to act in the playoffs, or how all the 13
tight.
seconds.
He gets tight. Yeah.
Yes. He starts to get worried about everything, and so the timeouts yesterday, people start to question McDermott being again. I never questioned Bean, to be fair, but some people they start to question everything, right?
Yes.
And they may think McDermott can't get better. Let's put it this way. They think, right?
Ooh, I think I'll start with Bean. I don't think Bean has reached the ceiling of his abilities, or even if he has, I think that ceiling is still very high. I trust him in putting together a team and evaluating talent, like even just what he did this past offseason, his ability that they didn't have a lot of money for salary cap space, and he figured out a way to sign new players, bring in Von Miller, like restructure contracts and deals, and having all of that piece, and let alone the ability to, bring in good free agents and draft picks. And he has had some misses. Like I think Boogie Basham could potentially be a miss. We know the Cody Ford pick and Zach Moss and some of the pieces like that. So he's not perfect, but nobody is. So even if Bean has reached his ceiling, I still think it's a high ceiling, and I'm very fine with him hitting it. For McDermott, this is a really cool question, because it's like, how do you define like a coach and a GM reaching their ceiling? Like it's very cool. I like this. As far as McDermott, I still think he's going into year 6, or he's in year 6 as a head coach. So maybe he has reached his ceiling. Like maybe there's not that much more for him to learn. Like he's been in big games. He's faced good opponents. He's faced a variety of opponents. So maybe there is nowhere left for him to go or learn. I think he still can potentially get better. And I will say, even if he has hit his ceiling, I think that ceiling is good enough to get this team to win a Super Bowl. I will say that. So even if McDermott and Bean are tapped out, they've hit the ceiling, there's nowhere else to go, I think this is still a Super Bowl team and a Super Bowl franchise that can still go forward. But I do think there is a potential, some evidence to that. That's a really great question from Gustavo. I love that question. Like the idea of like a coach and GM reaching their ceiling.
Yeah, I remember after last season's loss to the Chiefs.
Yeah.
I out of frustration, obviously. No, but with the 13 seconds, with McDermott being a defensive first coach, and he for a long time used to trust his defense more than Josh even, and I think it's changing. So I think it shows McDermott learning from the experiences, recognizing Josh's development, recognizing, look, now I have a franchise quarterback I can trust first, and my defense is gonna play a complementary role. It isn't the defense who's gonna win the game anymore, and the offense just needs to take care of the ball and avoid mistakes. I think he switched. So it's showing maturity, it's showing that he's learning with the experiences, right? But I remember putting up a comparison to the Michael Jordan 80s Bulls, like the late 80s, when Michael Jordan was playing awesome. He was MVP. He was scoring 38 points per game, all right? And they couldn't get past the Bad Boy Pistons or the Celtics, and he loved Doug Collins was the coach, right?
Yep.
He loved Doug Collins, etc. But the Bulls were like, you know what? Okay, Collins is nice, he's good, but we need better. And they made something that, if it happened today, it would be crazy, because they fired the head coach in the Eastern Conference Finals and things like that.
Yep.
Right? And they fired him and hired a guy nobody knew in Phil Jackson.
Yeah, some weird like hippie Zen Phil Jackson who played for the Knicks. Like, what are they doing? Yep.
Yeah, and okay, Phil Jackson was the guy to finally being able to get past the Pistons and to make Jordan play more for the team and things like that, and to achieve the goal to win championships. Maybe Doug Collins was good enough to sooner or later win a championship too. We will never know. but the change was necessary or was positive or had a good result.
Yeah.
Maybe it needs to happen with McDermott at some point. Time will tell, but I don't think it's right now. I think McDermott still has time to show that they can get past the Chiefs and they can win it all, right?
Yeah, I think he's got time. It's also tough too. Like, I mean, look at before Andy Reid won the Super Bowl with the Chiefs, he was known as that big game coach that couldn't win. Like year after year, when he was with the Eagles, they lost in the NFC Championship. Then they get to the Super Bowl and they lose that. And everybody was just like, this guy can't win the big one. Even earlier in the 90s, from a player perspective, Steve Young, before the Niners beat the Chargers in the Super Bowl, everybody was like, Steve Young can't get it done. They couldn't get past the Dallas Cowboys back-to-back years in the NFC Championship. He couldn't win the big one, yada, yada. Like, sometimes you just stay the course and eventually it works out. Sometimes, like the Bulls is a great example. You take a team that's like, man, you have this rising star, already basically the best player in the NBA, and a coach he has a great relationship with. You go to the Eastern Conference Finals and it's like, no, we're firing him and bringing this other guy. Everybody be like, what? Like, that doesn't, it would send shockwaves, but it's risky, right? It can work or sometimes it can't. I do think, you made a good point. I do think McDermott continues to learn and apply new things. And I think he's on the forefront of a lot of different movements and adjusting to what the current nature of the NFL is. So I think the Bills are in good hands. But this was a great question. This is one of the best questions I've ever seen in any show I've ever been on.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Gustavo. Sent the question, and Bruno complimented it. The best part of McDermott is the culture implemented in Buffalo, and I love it. Players really enjoy playing for him, and then come back like Jordan, Check, and especially Bees, right? And we can see they really like each other. They really care about each other, right? And even now we're seeing Buffalo B team in New Jersey with the Giants, right? And Dable and Hodgins now, the last one to be able to play well and be part of all the headlines. And it's awesome. It's part of the culture and it really matters. People tend to think it's bull crap and we don't need it in sports, but it's really important.
Culture is so important.
Yeah, absolutely.
It matters a lot.
Bruno has a theory. Dorsey has been playing more vanilla style of offense through the season after the bye week, and now before the bye week, I think he means, and he will unleash Kraken against the Bengals, KC, and the NFC winner. So we're gonna see the true Dorsey playbook now on it.
You know what? That's been like that little conspiracy theory I've heard, like rumbling from here and there, that it's been, he's keeping some things hidden and waiting until he really needs them in the playoffs. I think this would be like a fantastic one if you just saw him running new concepts and new rhythm and new, different pass to run ratios and what he was doing with Josh Allen. I do think, I don't know if it means necessarily a complete changing, but I do think against Cincinnati and especially against Kansas City, because they played them earlier in the year, I do think you will see certain buttons be pushed differently or certain dials turned up and down. I do think there is some truth to this theory that I think Dorsey's got some stuff, like not necessarily that he's like hiding or waiting for, but he's got some stuff that like, okay, when I really need it, I'm going to this, or when we play this team, I got this special thing cooked up that we haven't shown before. I do think there is some potential, validity to that.
And just again, come back to yesterday game. It's difficult because they were long percentage plays, but if Josh had hit all those throws deep, or if Shakir had caught that deep throw, etc., people would be like, "Oh, Dorsey's a genius because
correct
all those deep shots against."
What an amazing game! He's a great play caller.
It's weird.
Yeah, and it's funny, like those players like. Shakir drops a pass and it leads to some negative things, and the takeaway is, well, Dorsey shouldn't be calling deep shots. It's like, no, Shakir should catch the ball. That's what should happen.
Also, yes, that's true. Okay, Ruggeri. Anthony, did you expect so many passionate Buffalo Bills fans in Brazil?
I expected some. This is the second time I've been on the show. The first time I was on was before Bills Jets last season, I believe. And there was a decent amount of activity in the chat and questions. But from the first time, no. Like I knew I knew Fernando from Twitter and we engaged. And then I was like, he does a Bills show in Brazil? And I was like, there's Bills fans out there? And I was like, okay, like whatever. So but first time, yeah, no, I did not know that Bills Mafia was international and had made its way to South America. Like I did not know that was a thing. So it's pretty cool. Especially too, like it's not even just like Buffalo Bills fans in Brazil with like just general questions like, oh yeah, go Bills. Like there's really like you guys know about football and have real questions and real thoughts. Like it's not just like I don't know, like how Americans are with soccer, where it's just like, oh yeah, score goals, and I'm like, you don't know anything about soccer. Like you guys actually know about like American football and about the Bills. It's really cool to see. I like it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Gustavo said the question about the GM and the coach reaching the settings because I see your conservative GM. He thinks I wouldn't say conservative. I would see maybe more usual to what
I think with the Von Miller deal. I felt that was. I think largely he's more safe.
He's very bold, right?
Yes,
right?
That's the complete. Yeah, yes. But that's also why Sean McVay was considering retiring because they're in a full rebuild because they have no draft picks, they have no money. Like Les Snead sacrificed everything. Granted, they won a Super Bowl with it, but I think Bean is more conservative than he is aggressive. But I think he knows when to push those aggressive buttons. Like the Von Miller deal. That was an aggressive move. Like he saw what they wanted and what they needed, and he attacked and he got it. Same thing with even when they were revamping the team early on. Like maybe it wasn't big name players, but they spent money on Cole Beasley and John Brown, and they brought in Quentin Spain and Mitch Morse and Ty Secchi and John Feliciano and like rebuilt the offensive line. Look what they've done with Daquan Jones and Tim Settle and Shaq and Jordan Phillips. Like I think maybe he's not as splashy as Les Snead. Les Snead goes for the Odell Beckhams and the Von Millers and the big money and trading a first-round pick for this big-name guy. But I do think Bean is tactically aggressive. He's not just like, we're going to go out and spend all this money. He attacks the needs of the team and fills them. So, I mean, Les Snead is a wild man. But I don't think Bean is completely conservative. I think he's more tactfully aggressive.
Agree, and Gustavo says, I feel we are close to losing one of the biggest windows in the Super Bowl. I think we should have gone after Tomlin after Big Ben retirement.
I love Mike Tomlin. I think he's a tremendous coach.
Awesome. Yeah.
But I don't know if he doesn't want to leave Pittsburgh. He loves the Steelers. He loves that organization. His family is rooted there. Oh boy, like if you gave me the choice, Tomlin and Sean McVay.
Do you think Allen could have greater consistency with Tomlin?
Oh, I honestly don't even know how to answer that question. Like, I mean, if you're just going on past results, I mean, Mike Tomlin has been to 2 Super Bowls. He's won a Super Bowl. He's a guy who continuously shows that he knows how to maximize the most out of his players and on both sides of the ball. He's a good leader. He's a good dude. And honestly, he's always had a ton of success. Like he never seems to have a losing season every year. Even like this Steelers team this year was not a good team. They almost made the playoffs again. And I mean, if the Jets beat the Miami Dolphins, the Bills were playing the Steelers yesterday instead of the Miami Dolphins in the playoffs. So the Steelers could have made it. I think you could make the case. You could. Like Tomlin's a good coach, so maybe he could have greater consistency with Tomlin. That's just there's so many variables and so many unknowns in that scenario that I don't.
Coordinators and
you got to take. Who does he bring in? Like, what are the surrounding pieces? There's a lot of moving parts and variables. I would say though, if I love Sean McDermott and I want him to be the Bills coach, but if Sean McDermott left and he was replaced with Mike Tomlin, like that's a tremendous coach that is there. But yeah, there's a lot of variables in that piece.
Yeah, I just feel like I used to say it. I remember saying that after last year lost you, when people started, fire Dable sucks and things like that. And I was like, come on, you can expect much more than what Josh and the offense did in the last playoffs. Just like against the Chiefs, they literally won the game 2 times inside the 2-minute warning, and the defense allowed two comebacks from the Chiefs, so you can expect much more from your offense and how Josh was playing and things like that. And when they decided to go Dorsey, I thought, okay, it's awesome because it's the closest we have as a continuity with Dable. All right, and so I feel hard to expect more, even more from Josh. We're talking about a guy who has playing at the MVP level for the last 3 seasons. Oh, he's not going to win it again, but he's playing at MVP level. He's a top 2, top 3 guy every season. So it's more than enough to win, just like they say. And I think we have a great shot. But Tomlin, absolutely great coach. And when talking about the GM, and I remember, I don't know where I saw it, I read it about Madden. I'm a big time Madden player. Okay, I love playing Madden. Madden actually was one of the things that got me introduced to football. Right.
Okay.
And I remember reading people saying Madden has showed what's gonna happen in the NFL because back in the day we playing Madden leagues and they have rules, same Madden leagues, okay, and they have rules like just one trade per season per team. Why? Because there aren't trade in the NFL. Player for player trade, it doesn't exist in NFL. It's an NBA thing. It doesn't exist in NFL. And then it started with Shady for Kiko and other trades like this. And then you are trading your first round picks every year. It doesn't exist. It's impossible. You're gonna have problems, cap problems, and it's not an NFL thing. And then Les Snead started to trade all his first round picks for stars, and he won the Super Bowl. So and a lot of other stuff, running with quarterbacks. Oh, you're running too much with your quarterback. You're not supposed to run with your quarterback that much because it's not college football and things like that. And everything is changing in the NFL, and it's being like it was in Madden, So I think people sometimes want GMs to play Madden in real life, and in the article even they said, okay, it's the generation of general managers of today that played Madden when they were children, and so they started to put it in perspective and use it, right? But we can't expect everybody to do what Leslie did because it's too bold. And even right now, how can Vince be so bold? He needed to pay Josh, pay Trey, pay a lot of the guys they did draft, right? In the past, Edmonds next, and so you can make so many splash plays. He found a way to bring Miller in, but other than that, you are cap strapped for some time, and you need to decide if you want to keep your guys. If you want to keep your guys, you can bring others maybe. If you want to make a splash, you need to let someone leave, and so the choices are there to be made, right? And I think he loves his guys, especially the ones who can fulfill their potentials, right?
Yeah, 1,000%. And real quick, I think it's so funny of how you got more in tune with American football from Madden, because that's what it was like for me with soccer, with FIFA. Me and my friends would just play FIFA nonstop, and that's when I really started to get into okay, the difference between a 4-3-3 versus a 4-4-2 and a 4-2-3-1 and formational advantage and all the and then applied it to watching real soccer, and I'd be like, that's a 4-3-3. I know what that means. That's super funny. But
yesterday Romo said that's a sluggo, and I was I love sluggos.
I know that is. I run that all the time in Madden. Yeah. But that even helped me too with with football terminology, playing Madden. When I still think of someone says oh, cover 3 sky, I think of the Madden play call of what it looks like with the safety coming down, and it's funny how it helps you learn. But I think that's a spot on. People see that, and you hear it all the time. People will be like, dude, this isn't Madden. But Les Snead plays GM like it's Madden. He's out here just signing players and trading first round picks. What they think this past year, they didn't have a first or second or third or fourth round draft pick. They only had 2 picks the entire draft, and they were a 5th rounder and a 6th rounder. But again, you're seeing what happens. Stafford gets hurt, Cooper Kupp gets hurt, and their whole team falls apart because they've sacrificed. You use that money and all those draft picks to build up your depth. But if you don't have those picks and you don't have that money because you've sacrificed it all for like top tier A+ dudes, you better hope those A+ dudes stay fit and don't get hurt, because if they do, you got nothing. Look at the Bills this year. Von Miller goes down. Trey White came back mid-year. Micah Hyde goes down. Matt Milano missed some time. Tremaine Edmonds missed some time. Josh Allen hurt his elbow. The offensive line has been banged up. Dawson Knox got hurt at one point. All these things. And look at the year they had. They finished as the 2 seed in the AFC. They could have been the 1 seed. They were top 5 in DVOA and defense. They were number 2 on offense. They were able to do all that because of the tactical management of Brandon Beane. Whereas you take the Rams, who just won the Super Bowl and pretty much brought the same team back, but because their top dudes got hurt, they had no depth to help them out because they spent all their draft picks and they spent all their money.
Absolutely. Even the losses, if you watch the losses, they gave away the game against the Vikings with watch it snap. One timeout could have be enough to kick a field goal against the Dolphins and win another one. So 3 losses, and we are talking about small details to be wins. And
it's a fine line.
Loss. Yeah, and Gustavo added, he thinks the team lacks the DNA champions. Sanders added this year, last year, and Miller added this year. We need guys who have been there. I kind of agree, but I think you don't born a champion. You need to go and get it. Just like you told about Andy Reid. At some point, people said, "No, he can't win," and until he could, and when he could, now he's a big time winner. So. Right now, people say that Michael Jordan couldn't win with the 80s Bulls, and nowadays he's the GOAT. So I think, yes, it's important to have experienced guys, but a lot of Bills players have won in college or in other levels, and the coach is the same way. McDermott has been in a Super Bowl with the Panthers, almost won it all, right? So. Leslie Frazier, all the guys have a lot of experience. Leslie Frazier played for the Bears, right?
Yeah, the 85 Bears who won the Super Bowl.
So the biggest,
tremendous.
The best D ever, maybe.
Yeah. I like that idea. Like I don't think you necessarily need it. I think it would be good to have it. Like if you have guys, whether it's coaches or players who have been to the Super Bowl and won the Super Bowl, I think it helps you. Like the one example I always give, the Barcelona team that took over soccer, when they brought in Thierry Henry, I was like, oh my God, that's a fantastic signing, right? And it helped them kind of lead into what they became. But I mean, if Thierry Henry doesn't come, Messi and Xavi and Iniesta and Pep, like they're still probably going to get a couple Champions Leagues out of that. Like they still probably reach something, like, or even with the Bulls, right? Like they bring in Dennis Rodman. And it's like, oh my God, like this awesome role player who won championships with Detroit, like he takes them over the edge. But with Jordan and Pippen and Phil Jackson, like they still probably win another championship or two. Like it helps for sure. Like there's nothing bad ever. There's no downside in adding a championship caliber or championship DNA. I don't think you necessarily need it, but I do agree with Gustavo to a degree. Like I would like more championship dudes. If they had more guys on the roster who had been to a Super Bowl or won a Super Bowl, I would feel a little better. So I do think there is some merit to that for sure.
Yeah, and he compliments with that's a hypothetical one, right?
I like
if
this.
You ask each Bills fan if they would sacrifice the future of the franchise, draft picks for a ring, over 95% would accept it. How do you see it?
Oh, if it meant a guaranteed ring, I would sacrifice everything. If you told me right now that if the Bills trade Josh Allen, they win a Super Bowl next year, I will personally pack Josh Allen's bags and send him to whatever it takes. The issue is for Gustavo, or for me at least in my brain to this question from Gustavo, sacrificing all of that doesn't guarantee it. And if it doesn't work, then you're screwed. Think about how bad it would be with the season the Rams had. Think how bad it would be in the media if they hadn't won the Super Bowl last year. Everybody would be ripping Sean McVay and Les Snead for sacrificing the future and not getting anything out of it. So it is very risky. But yeah, if if you told me it would definitely work, I'd sign up for it today. I would sign up for anything that gave me a Super Bowl right now for the Buffalo Bills, whatever it would take. Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely. In sports, you have no guarantees, right? Because
No.
I think I like the way they are working, and they use this sustainable success sentence, right?
Yeah.
Because as long as you have Josh healthy, you have a window. Joe Burrow just told it, right? What's your window of Super Bowl for the Bengals? As long as I play, the window is open, right?
As long as I'm here.
So for Josh Allen, it's the same thing, all right? So as long as you put a competent roster around him and he's healthy, your window is open. And it's better to have, because it's not NBA, it's not best of 7 playoffs. So having the best team doesn't guarantee you the Super Bowl. I absolutely believe we had the best team with Von Miller high at the beginning of the year.
Agreed.
And DVOA shows that also. And it wasn't a guarantee we could go to the playoffs and get to the Super Bowl, because you can lose in any given Sunday to any decent team who's in a good day, or you have a bad day or an injury or something. So it's better to have a consistent window for Josh than selling everything for 1 year and maybe it goes wrong and even Josh gets hurt and what else? What we're gonna do then, right?
Yeah.
And you lose the opportunity. We are stuck with Josh in the next few seasons and no help because you sold everything to give one shot 1 year, right? So I like our chances, and I truly believe Josh is gonna lead us to the Super Bowl sooner rather than later. I hope it's this year, but I'm confident we're gonna break through.
I hope so. I'm so the 13 seconds rings in my head. Just they should have made it last year, and I hope they do it. And I truly believe they will get one, or at least I like to think it's just so hard to, you know. And I don't know if it's because we were talking about soccer beforehand, but I just think of Messi and how great he was and how great those Barcelona teams were. And they lost to Chelsea. They lost to Inter when they parked the bus. The collapse versus Roma. The collapse versus Liverpool. Like, even when you have this guy who is like, and Messi, I think Messi is better at soccer than I think Josh Allen is football. Like, at football, like Messi is arguably the greatest soccer player of all time. Maybe Allen gets there, but you had this great player. Granted, Barcelona messed some things up, but they just lost these games against these teams that you didn't think it was possible. Like, nobody thought Roma was going to beat Barca, especially after they went up in the first leg. And even with how good Liverpool was, let alone taking it back, like, Barca was at their height. Nobody was thinking that Chelsea team with Fernando Torres was going to, beat Barca. And they did. It's so hard to win a championship, even when you have the best player or a good team. Everything has to work out. So I get Gustavo's point of if you can sacrifice everything, exactly what he says, nothing is guaranteed. I can't standing being the almost champion anymore. I feel that, I feel it in my soul. That's real.
Yeah, and it's NFL. Okay, if Micah Hyde, Jordan Poyer aren't getting any younger, at the same time, we'd expect Kyrie Elam to continue to develop, Greg Rousseau to become a big-time pass rusher. He showed improvement from last year to this year. And all these guys have been drafted. Imagine not having these draft picks, right? So
that's the piece, right? Even with him saying, we'll lose key players in the renewals and we'll need a lot of creativity from Bean to replace. Absolutely. But I trust Bean to continue to, fill the roster. And I'm in the same boat. I hate being the almost champion. I don't want to keep being a bridesmaid. I want to be the bride. I want to be the one getting married. I want the championship. But sacrificing everything doesn't guarantee you a championship. It doesn't. Actually, I think a lot of teams that have followed the Rams model that Les Snead used, I don't even know how many of them have won championships. Because it's hard. So many things cannot work in your favor. And then if it doesn't work, you're screwed going forward. So it can work. And I get the notion, but it's very risky.
Remember the Eagles dream team?
I was literally going to bring that up when Vince Young was like, it's a dream team. Look what we did. And it backfired completely. It did not work.
maybe it contributed to getting Andy Reid out of Philly,
It
right?
may have, yeah. Like
Yeah,
it's hard, like to sacrifice everything. Because again, look what happened. The Bills went all in for this year by going and getting Von Miller, and look what happened. Von Miller got hurt. Like you
yeah,
just don't know what can happen when you really put all your eggs into one basket. If that one basket breaks, your team broke, and then you have to, like, what do you do going forward? The Rams are in a real tough spot because they have no talent, like, aside from, granted, they have great players, Kupp and Donald and Stafford and Ramsey, but what do you do after that? Like, if they don't work out, and how do you replenish the pipeline? Like, what happens? It is very risky.
yeah, and even the Patriots with all the dynasty. If you see the first championship for Brady and the last one, oh, imagine like, it wasn't even the first, but he had at some point Moss, Wes Welker, and then okay, Wes Welker is getting old, and Tom Brady got injured, and Moss was getting old, and things like that. And then they found somewhat Edelman, developed him, and found other guys. So you need to keep getting better, keep replacing players, but
And
it's
even
part of the
with
game.
those teams, like, they had Dante Scarnecchia, like one of the best offensive line coaches of all time. They had a tremendous offensive line the entire time when Brady was there, Pro Bowl and All Pro offensive linemen. They had Ty Law and Willie McGinnis and Ted Johnson and Teddy Bruschi and Mike Vrabel and Rodney Harrison on defense. Like,
Great defenses, yeah.
yes, all of these pieces, like, and they were only able to do that because they drafted well and they spent their money accordingly. Like, think of those Patriots teams. Like, the Patriots didn't come into free agency aside from trading for Randy Moss, but remember, they traded for Moss when he was in Oakland and everybody thought he was done. They thought he was washed up and he was a shell of himself and he was nothing. He came to New England and became Minnesota Randy Moss again. But aside from that, they brought in Revis for 1 year, but this was a team that the Patriots didn't do anything splashy. They just stuck to the model and just kept going forward and
Great
going
defenses,
forward.
and we have been there too. If you look at the stats of our defenses, they have been top notch every year. So kind of the same formula. And Bruno wants offensive linemen every year, first round. And I get him, but if Cody Ford panned out, we would have a great guard for actually.
Yeah.
So it was a second round pick. So it's not like they're not trying, but you just can't hit every pick, right? It's tough.
I'm with
Taylor. I can't get over Wyatt Teller, but it happens. And I'm afraid that Isaiah Hodgins is the new Wyatt Teller.
I liked Isaiah Hodgins when he came out, and
Yeah.
I liked him this year. I haven't wanted to, like, jump on the bandwagon, but I wasn't happy when he got let go. But I was like, it's fine, whatever. But yeah, it hurts to see him doing well for the Giants, and then you see the Wyatt Teller piece. But to Bruno's point, like, where I'm at with the offensive line, I would take an offensive lineman with every single pick. Like, just do it. Like, I'm just so sick of worrying about the offensive line. Like, because they need to improve it, but they also need talent and depth for the future. Like, you need to rebuild the offensive line for talent and for youth. So I would be fine if they used a first round pick in the draft for offensive line. Give it to me and take one with every pick and use all your free agency money on offensive line. Just rebuild the whole thing. I'm fine with it.
I don't want to lose you for the next opportunity, but I'm holding you too longer. You're going to be mad and not accept my invites anymore.
I'm enjoying this. I have no problems. No worries.
Gustavo has a last question. After the fateful 30 seconds, I cursed Fraser whole family.
You cursed the whole family?
Who do you keep him for this season? I wouldn't.
He cursed the whole family? Wow.
It's hard because I think, first of all, I don't see... Like, I can't take McDermott out of the equation when we talk defense. I think McDermott's defense. He's a big-time defensive guy, and obviously Fraser isn't just the defensive coordinator. He's the associated head coach. He's like a 1B there. He's the first guy that probably Sean listens to, and So they're together in this. If you get rid of Fraser and don't get rid of McDermott, I don't think you're gonna change too much thing. How do you see this?
I think that's a good point. Like they're so tight. Their relationship is good. I really only think the way Frazier leaves is if he gets like a head coaching opportunity somewhere else and wants to go, because they are tight.
He
Him and
deserves
McDermott.
it.
Yeah, he deserves it. I think he's a good coach. Like
Yeah.
I know what happened with the 13 seconds was terrible and inexcusable, but if you're looking at the whole piece, what this defense has been year after year under Leslie Frazier and Sean McDermott to a degree, they're one of the best defenses in the league every single time, year after year. Now, that doesn't mean that they don't have vulnerabilities. I don't think the Bills defense the past couple of years matched up well with the Kansas City Chiefs. And then Trey White isn't available for last year's game against the Chiefs, and that hurt even more. And then 13 seconds happened. Like, just because you may have bad games or bad moments doesn't mean you're a bad coach or a bad unit. Everybody has different matchup advantages, matchup disadvantages. I think you have to look at the whole picture. And I think if you look at the whole picture, Leslie Frazier has been good for this team. Again, even using yesterday's game as an example, I know they gave up 24 points. I know it was 31, but 7 of it was a defensive touchdown. Look what he did to manufacture pressure against Skylar Thompson, like we talked about. Like the front four wasn't getting it done. So he was blitzing. He was calling simulated pressures. He was calling creepers. He was doing everything in order to generate sacks and pressure. He called a good game. Look what he did earlier in the year against the Kansas City Chiefs. They use that odd mirror look where they have 3 down linemen and then Milano as that aggressive spy. The Bills had never run that. He busted out a new wrinkle in order to shut down Mahomes and beat the Chiefs. I think he's a good dude as a person. I think he's a good defensive coordinator. I think you could, if he went somewhere else and you wanted to bring someone else in, there's a chance you could be better. But I think you could do a lot worse than Leslie Frazier. So I am completely fine with him sticking around. And again, even my thing with the 13 seconds, as much as it sucked, the kickoff should have been a pooch kick. The communication didn't get through from the special teams coach to Tyler Bass. So even that should have run off another 3-4 seconds. That played a role as well. That doesn't excuse what happened to the defense, so on and so forth. But I don't want to judge one person or one unit off of one play, especially when the rest of their body of work speaks so highly. It's like, I don't know, like if somebody misses a penalty kick in soccer, are we going to be like, oh, that guy sucks? Like, no, look at his body of work. Like Messi has missed a ton of penalty kicks. He's still arguably the best player of all time. Like, you're not just going to ship him off, even if he misses a huge penalty. He missed one in that Chelsea stupid Champions League. Oh, God, I keep coming back to it. I keep coming back to it. God.
No doubt, but I think it's part of the fandom, and the moment we win it all, everybody is gonna say, "Oh, Fraser is the best," and McDermott's
You know what?
the
See,
best.
I think it's the opposite. I think people are going to be like, "Man, we were lucky to win the Super Bowl. This person's got to go. This isn't working." Like, yeah,
Yes, definitely there will be a lot of guys like this, no doubt. And still, Gustavo saying his last point of view.
oh, that's
Taking
fair.
players in general, when they already have experience, it's more guarantee you have success. It's fair, but at the same time, it's not easy to get the good experienced players.
Yeah.
Because most of the time, you get access to the washed up guys, or they aren't at the prime. It's difficult to get access to the good experienced players. So sometimes the potential guy in the guys you draft pan out. Look at the Bengals. The Bengals why do they have great weapons to Burrow? Because they draft Chase in the first round. They draft Higgins in the first round. Boyd was there already and is a great slot option, right? So Mixon was drafted in the first round. So they draft everybody. And
yeah, they
so
built their guys.
They're said and done, right?
I think that's a good way to put it. I agree with Gustavo. Like, when you have experienced players in the league, especially good ones, like, they're already, you know what they can do. Whereas if you have a younger player, you're more like projecting whether or not they can be a good player. So yeah, like, I think if you can have the known quantity of an experienced player, I would love that. But exactly to your point, like, it's harder to get that, especially those guys have to be, traded for, or you have to sign them. And it's tough to give up assets in order to acquire those players. That's why it takes that mix of experienced guys versus drafting guys and bringing them up, or even bringing signing guys early on. Like, look at who are the experienced guys for the Bills now, like the Micah Hydes, the Jordan Poyers, the Tre'Davious Whites. Tre'Davious White was drafted. Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde were signed as free agents. Poyer was nothing coming out of Cleveland. Micah Hyde had playoff experience, but he wasn't this leader in all-pro safety. Like, you build it and then you supplement it with pieces here and there. But if to Gustavo's point, like if the Bills could sign a bunch of great experienced veterans who are winners and Super Bowl champions, I would gladly take it. But it's like, to your point, they're fewer and far between, and it costs a lot to get them.
Absolutely. Anthony, thank you so much, man. I don't want to hold you here anymore, anymore. And I really appreciate you coming here. And the last one to finish, I think that's the perfect one to finish our conversation today. Vitor is coming back from the future right now. Okay. And he sees the Buffalo Bills are the new Super Bowl champions. He has the news. And awesome. Where are we going from there now?
I know, right? I like this. I come from the future. I also want to know, tell me who else wins stuff so I can bet on these games, and then I can just get super rich off of betting on all these games in the future, knowing everything. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Man, I really appreciate all this conversation. It was a blast. I had a blast. It's really fun to talk to football, soccer, everything. I really appreciate your taking your time to be here with us. I'm sure all Bills Mafia from Brazil is also glad to have you here, and the doors are always wide open so you can join us and talk Bills. And hopefully when we get to the point Vitor came from, okay, we can talk again.
And then we can bring him back and be like, you called it, like you knew it. Exactly. No, this was I always enjoy talking football with you. So when you reached out today, I was available. I was glad we were able to do it. Thank you so much for having me and for the kind words. I had a great time. Again, I always do, like the question earlier of like the passionate Bills fans in Brazil. Like this is like a super cool thing to be like on a show basically on another continent in a country like that isn't known for football. And the questions were great. The engagement was great. The back and forth. We got a guy from the future. This was just super cool.
Yesterday, McDaniel came here, Yesterday, Mike McDaniels came here and was like, okay, next year I'm going to learn about this new technology, clock management.
Damn, that's mean.
It's going to be tougher.
Poor guy. But no, yeah, that's wild. But yeah, I had a great time. Anytime you want me to come back, I'm more than willing. This was awesome. And yeah, I had a great time. Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And I'm going to continue a little bit in Portuguese. Good luck to me right now. Wish me luck so I can translate everything. I have no idea how.
Good luck. I wish you the best.
But I'm going to try a little bit and we stay in touch.
All right, Bills, I'll see you.
Always. Thank you so much, man.
Go Bills.
Beleza, gente? O Anthony, excepcional. Sempre esse cara sensacional. Chamei ele para participar hoje. Não hesitou, né? Achou um horáriozinho na agenda ali e pôde participar. Cara, sinceramente, eu não tenho a mínima ideia de como é que eu vou falar da nossa conversa agora, porque foi tanta coisa que a gente abordou aqui, né? Que para traduzir tudo, cara, primeiro que não tem nem como lembrar tudo assim de cara mas alguns pontos, vamos lá, tocar em alguns pontos aí. A gente teve bastante interação aqui com as perguntas do Gustavo. Vou começar de trás para frente, que está mais fresquinho, né? E ele falou, né, o Gustavo perguntando essa questão da maneira que o Rams se aproxima, né, do draft e da maneira de lidar do general manager, o Les Snead, principalmente trocar as escolhas de draft por jogadores mais garantidos, jogadores experientes mais garantidos aí, que, né, você tem a certeza do que vai entregar, que a gente não deixou de fazer quando trocou a escolha que virou o Jefferson pelo Diggs, né? E aí e o porquê né, o Gustavo perguntando do porquê do Beane não ser tão agressivo, e o Anthony falou que ele acredita que o Beane seja passivamente agressivo. Ele analisa bastante, ele é agressivo como foi com o Diggs, citou o Von Miller agora e tal, mas ao mesmo tempo essa questão de manter uma janela aberta por um máximo de tempo. E eu não vejo, sinceramente, uma maneira muito maior de que poderia ter feito a mais, né? Tipo, esse ano, mandado uma escolha de primeira rodada ali na semana 8 por quem? Por alguma ajuda na posição de wide receiver e tal. E aí o cap que a gente não tinha para encaixar esse jogador. Então, eu acho que tem um trabalho a ser feito na sequência, mas é bom a gente ter essas escolhas de primeira rodada, né, e segunda, etc., para poder ajeitar o time. E, ao mesmo tempo, a gente vê, o Kyrie Irving começa a dar respostas, né? Tomara que ele possa contribuir mais agora na sequência dos playoffs, mas ainda que não seja aquela contribuição toda, com certeza no que vem já vai estar contribuindo mais. O Greg Rousseau, que ano passado não foi aquele cara totalmente diferencial, esse ano já está melhor. Então, a vida da NFL é isso aí. Né? O Vitor veio do futuro falando que os Bills já são campeão. O Anthony pediu, então, para avisar quem que ganha os jogos e como que são os placares para ele poder apostar, né? Mas, de maneira geral, gente, o Anthony falou que realmente não que entende críticas ao Dorsey, mas que não é anti-Dorsey, que acha que Miami foi muito agressivo, atacou a gente muito, nos deu realmente a profundidade, né, para que a gente atacasse, e que o Josh Allen estava atacando aquele espaço na profundidade, era o que ele tinha para atacar. Em algumas oportunidades haviam outras rotas curtas, mas o próprio Josh Allen que toma a escolha de atacar em profundidade. Ele mencionou o fato de repente, ele achar que... Eu comentei do Dorsey e do Allen, às vezes tem uma mentalidade parecida, de ser muito agressivo, né? E ele concordou e acha que o Dable talvez era melhor nisso do que o Dorsey, apesar do nosso ataque ter tido até uma melhora esse ano, né, em comparado ao ano passado, se a gente olhar para as estatísticas. Ele acha que o Dable fazia talvez um trabalho um pouco melhor de segurar o Josh Allen, de, olha, né, você foi nessa longa, agora vamos fazer uma jogada aqui mais curta e tal. E aí até eu mencionei das corridas do Josh Allen, que muita gente reclamava, né? E agora o pessoal está elogiando o Dable, mas ele correu lá o Daniel Jones 500 vezes ontem no jogo do Giants. E até mencionei, cara, às vezes o Dable chamava uma corrida para o Allen achando, show, estamos sendo agressivos comigo correndo, mas simplesmente estava evitando ele de lançar em profundidade, né? Fazendo ele correr com a bola, né? E assim, o Anthony vê o Dable realmente segurando um pouco mais o Josh Allen, segurando um pouco mais as rédeas, mantendo ele talvez um pouco mais sob controle, né? Mas que muitas escolhas são do Josh e que muitas das jogadas que não foram feitas ali, se tivessem sido feitas, o passe para o John Brown, um pouco lançado no ombro direito do John Brown ao invés do lado esquerdo, um drop do Shakir, a bola para o Gabriel Davis, que foi um pouco underthrown, ele tentou fazer o catch ali, né? O Anthony até usou o termo moss, né? De fazer o que se usa por lá quando o wide receiver ganha no alto, né? Eles falam que o cara moss de outro, né? Fez o que o Randy Moss fazia. Se o Gabe Davis faz a recepção ali por cima do defensive back, que era um cara não draftado, né? Late round ali, não draftado, novato. Então, para e pensa, né? Você tem um cornerback em campo, a gente tem tido o Dan Jackson. E aí a defesa adversária manda blitz e deixa o Dan Jackson no mano a mano ali. Cara, é uma boa jogar uma bola no mano a mano, um contra um, para ter um wide receiver grande para brigar ali, né, naquela bola. Então, são bolas que não se completa, a grande maioria, mas as que completaram foram o suficiente para a gente conseguir botar pontos no placar. E então foge um pouco do Dorsey, não é? Ele acha também que há um exagero de muito, o Dorsey, tudo é o Dorsey, não é bem por aí, passa muito pela execução pelos jogadores. E claramente o maior problema do Anthony com o nosso ataque é a linha ofensiva, né? Ele acha que a nossa linha ofensiva tem muitos problemas, que o Spencer Brown realmente muitos altos e baixos, mas os baixos eles são muito baixos e tem sido um grande problema, é uma área que a gente vai ter que fixar aí na sequência, né? E estou de acordo, acho realmente que a inconsistência na linha ofensiva prejudica tudo, jogo terrestre, proteção de Josh Allen, tudo mais, né? E depois disso, os alvos, e aí sim, né? Ele acha que também adicionar um alvo interessante aí para ter mais dinamismo no nosso ataque, não ficar tão dependente de Stephon Diggs, mas principalmente linha ofensiva, é onde o Anthony acha que mora o maior problema do nosso ataque. Quando eu falei da defesa, eu mencionei que eu não confio tanto assim e tal. Perguntei para ele como é que ele vê a defesa, ele gosta muito da nossa defesa, né? E aí eu perguntei se ele confia que a nossa defesa consegue segurar ali um Mahomes, um Bengals abaixo de 25, 20 pontos ali num duelo, né? E ele falou que, difícil, né? Porque são ataques muito dinâmicos e tal, que o Von Miller tá mostrando, que o jogo, né? Que o tape tá mostrando a falta que o Von Miller faz agora para ganhar aquele 1 contra 1 quando a gente mais precisa, terceira para longa e tudo mais. E que realmente o nosso pass rush precisa ser melhor contra matchups favoráveis, como foi contra o Dolphins com alguns jogadores reservas na linha, e como vai ser contra o Bengals também, com jogadores reservas na linha, estão sem 3 titulares na linha ofensiva, né? Perderam o left tackle agora no último jogo, já tinha 2 jogadores fora, e então a nossa linha precisa ganhar mais esses duelos individuais. O Von Miller está fazendo falta nisso, ele torce muito para que o Micah Hyde volte, né? Não só ele, todos nós, que acha que isso vai dar uma consistência maior na nossa secundária para ajudar esse pass rush, dar mais tempo para o pass rush chegar. E está preocupado com os tackles perdidos. Né? E ele mencionou que a nossa defesa tem sido uma das piores ranqueadas da liga, atrás de Bears, atrás de Texans, de Falcons, em termos de tackles perdidos. E isso não encaixa com uma defesa do McDermott, que sempre foi uma das melhores nesse sentido. E a gente tem visto isso, né? Muitas dessas conversões de terceira para longa, quarta para longa, foi realmente o pessoal errando tackles. E aí até o Marcel trouxe aí que talvez a falta de treinamentos tenha contribuído para isso, e faz total sentido, porque nossa equipe tem gastado o tempo de treinamento muito para recuperar jogadores, para treinar de uma maneira mais leve, né? Uma equipe que sofreu com lesões a temporada toda, né? Então é natural que tenha mais cuidados nos treinos, e aí você não tacleia, não pratica tanto isso, né? A parte técnica acaba faltando ali no jogo um pouco, né? Então isso tem sido um problema da defesa, mas ficou muito feliz com a evolução mostrada pelo Kyrie Elam, pelos defensive backs fazendo ótimas jogadas na bola quando foram acionados ontem, né? E está contente assim com a performance da nossa defesa. E, gente, realmente foi uma baita conversa, muito legal. Quem tem o inglês aí que pôde entender, vale a pena, né? Eu acho difícil conseguir traduzir muita coisa, lembrar mais aqui de muita coisa, mas espero que possa ter entregado um conteúdo legal aí para toda a Bills Mafia, que o pessoal possa estar aproveitando aí, curtindo esse Leading the Charge de hoje com a presença do Anthony aí do Cover One, que é sempre muito gente fina, muito legal, tá sempre com a gente aí interagindo, seja no Twitter e seja quando é convidado aqui, né? E eu quero agradecer muito a participação de toda a galera, né? Quero agradecer, deixa o seu like aí, né? Não custa nada deixar o seu like aí no vídeo, se inscreve aí no canal, né? E o Pix está na tela também, porque não tem valor para se inscrever no canal, não tem mensalidade, não tem nada disso. Quem quiser contribuir com o meu trabalho no canal aí, no Dedicar, no canal do fernandoschmude, está aí o Pix na tela. Eu sou muito grato a todos que contribuíram já. Afinal de contas, vocês estão me ajudando muito a poder estar me dedicando mais tempo para o canal, principalmente agora nos playoffs, estou tentando dedicar mais tempo ainda, né? Produzir conteúdo legal aí. E a galera que ajuda através do Pix ajuda muito, né? Não posso ajudar, não tem problema, não tem problema. Dá o like aí que já está ajudando, compartilha o conteúdo, né? Se inscreve no canal, já está ajudando bastante também, tá? Muito obrigado, né? Toda a galera que participou, que esteve junto com a gente, quase 2 horas de novo aí de live. Eu pedi para o cara vir participar 30 minutinhos, segurei o cara 1h30. Daqui a pouco essa galera foge para participar aqui, mas acho que foi bem divertido e foi bem legal a resenha. Obrigado pela participação de todos no chat aí, mandando perguntas e tudo mais. Né, até uma passadinha aqui no final, ver se eu não perdi nada. O Vitor ainda mandou aqui, ó. Boa noite, hoje mais calma, analisando os jogos melhor, geral passou sufoco fora na... É isso, né? Eu ainda falei ontem, né? Vamos ver como é que vai ser o jogo do Bengals. O Chiefs não jogou, né? Então fica fácil ficar com medo que o Chiefs está voando, mas o Chiefs foi para prorrogação com o Texas no final da temporada, né? Então todo mundo tem seus problemas, gente. Sobrevivemos e vamos para a próxima. Temos condição de jogar muito contra o Bengals. Vamos esperar que isso aconteça. Obrigado aí pro Gustavo, que também mandou as perguntas, né? Tamo junto, meu irmão. E é isso, galera. Muito obrigado a todos. Eu volto em breve aí. Vamos ver o que eu consigo produzir essa semana, quem que eu consigo trazer aí. Vai ter pré-jogo, sim. Vai ter mais conteúdo essa semana sobre Bills e Bengals. E tá aí. Valeu. Muito obrigado aí. Desculpa se eu não consegui traduzir muita coisa, né? Porque, afinal de contas, a conversa ficou mais longa do que eu esperava. Fluiu, foi legal. E aí, passando 1h30 para eu conseguir traduzir tudo realmente que a gente falou, vai ser difícil aqui. Mas foi legal, né? Então, para quem conseguir aproveitar aí, 100% com o inglês, show, né? E quem não conseguiu aproveitar muito, né? Basicamente foi essa parte final que eu traduzi aí. Valeu, galera. Muito obrigado mesmo pela participação de todos e até breve aí com mais conteúdo sobre Bills aqui no canal do Fernando Schmude. Até a próxima. Go Bills sempre. Valeu.